Welcome back. Last time we talked about how to move water through your property, and I hinted on how to use a French drain. We'll talk about French drains a little bit and how they're currently installed and why I think it doesn't effectively infiltrate the water into the ground like it could.
They're built to move water away and not into the ground.
They're currently built this way to move water as fast as they can away from an area. Remember, most low-impact developments that are put in municipalities are still put in out of fear of flooding to protect your house and protect your home. French drains are put in with the pipe at the bottom and the holes facing down.
This way, any water that flows in flows out.
But it doesn't give sufficient time for any water that does enter this area to infiltrate and percolate into the ground. So my suggestion is raise the pipe up to a sufficient height that you feel comfortable. For example, maybe you have 6 inches of stone underneath the pipe. So the first 6 inches of water that flow through that area can percolate into the ground. If it rains harder or more and it rises above that point, then the water whisks away. The fear is that the soil won't absorb fast enough and it'll saturate.
Which we know it does.
Or that the soil is clay and infiltrates too slowly. The key is to run the water further in your French drain if the soil is harder and less likely to percolate the water into the ground. French drains don't need piping, but it's always nice to have backup just in case there's a large rain that exceeds limitations of yours. Today, I'll introduce you to what's called a bioswale and show you an actual property in my area that uses this bioswale in an effective way. Currently in townships, we run water through culverts, but we usually cut them clean. So we take all the vegetation out of them because we want the water to move as fast as we can out of the neighborhood and eventually into sewer pipes. The better way to do this is to plant the culvert with water-loving native plants. But first, you'd have to prepare the bottom of the culvert. Currently, culverts are hard and packed down, so you'd have to give at least a foot of organic material and soil and then plant in that. The problem with this is cost and maintenance. Sewer drains collect the water to take it somewhere else. In this area, we have a combination of culverts and sewer pipes. Sewer pipes have to empty somewhere. So in this case, the sewer pipe, part of it, is emptying into this gentleman's property. When you move water, it needs to mimic the natural elements. In this bioswale, you'll notice there's bulrushes and other water-loving plants. These are the type of plants that grow around water, naturally. You can have a combination of elements. For example, you have the place where the water is pooling, so you plant water-loving plants and a wet garden. But then you have that water move from there if it gets too high or saturates too much, so the water doesn't pool there anymore, and you can run that through a French drain to another place. You could have a series of these depending on how large your property is. Stay tuned as we have an interview with the gentleman that owns this house.
Very nice gentleman.
And he explains how it performed last night during one of a very heavy rainfalls. We had 4 inches of rain in 2 hours, and that's after it had rained all day.
That's a lot of rain.
This property that I'm looking at now has a beautiful wetland catchment for any water that comes from the pipes from all the neighborhood across the street. So it goes into a sewer and comes out on this gentleman's property. He's put a beautiful garden in here that just absorbs the water. And I was just asking the gentleman, last night we had about 4 inches of rain throughout the day and it flooded the streets. And I asked you, sir, how do you think that your catchment handled the volume of water?
It does a great job every year, yeah.
That's amazing. You've done a phenomenal job.
Last night was the most rain we've had here in 3.5 years.
I mean, you have a lot of water coming on your property and it took care of it really well. So I really like to congratulate you on that. It's amazing. It's important to note that the flooding I'm talking about is water that moves over land that should be able to infiltrate into your property, but can't because of the way we've built. I'm not talking about when you build on a floodplain. A floodplain is right near water. This area is already very close to the water table. So it's already saturated. We shouldn't be building in floodplains. And when we do, and then put hard surfaces, we get in real trouble. Floodplains were created by nature for the overflow. Certain things actually thrive in a flood zone.
Not us.
But unfortunately, we've built in flood zones. So we have to learn to deal with that by building other elements. Sometimes we can create wetlands. We can move the water from the area we don't want to have it
Like downtown.
over to a field and create a natural wetland. If we do it properly, this can be a beautiful place for ground nesting birds, pollinated plants, aquatic life. It doesn't have to be fenced off and put in jail like some stormwater ponds are today. So there you have it. Now you have bioswales and French drains and a lot of information so that you can start building your perfect system and know what's best for your property. So until next time, love and respect.